Alexis, throwing it back to you and to cBridge, what you wanted to show us at the end of the presentation, again, is very flexible in terms of looking at what kind of flow is going through the bridge, who's on it, and then basically identifying what you want to do with that flow. I guess I wanted to ask you and go back a little bit into the bridge conversation. There's many bridge providers out there, I think, in the industry. And I wanted to ask you, in your experience, why is migration hesitation still such a major blocker for brokers really looking to modernize their infrastructure? Because it seems like, I mean, look, we're all used to MetaQuotes, we're all used to MetaTrader, and really cTrader as well. All kudos to Spotware. But a lot of firms, and I think the guys would also agree, people are just hesitant a lot of the time to switch things up and modernize. Kind of, where do you think all of this hesitation comes from? Because from what Drew and John have said, it seems like, yes, we have a toxic flow problem, but we also have, let's say, a technological problem as well, where we have old school infrastructure that may not be able to handle what's happening and what's coming.
Okay, so hesitation comes first of what is the bridge? It's connected to your Ps, it's connected to your trading platforms. So it's not a peripheral system that we can change it on Monday. If it doesn't work, we can fix it on Monday. It's a core part of the execution. But where the hesitation comes, it comes down to two things. One, what I'm saying is they're locked in by their current bridge provider. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying is configuration comes so heavy, right, that only a few people actually understand it. And after years and years of this heavy configuration and someone actually leaving, and what happens is the bridge has to support them because no one knows, right? And then many times the bridges create custom configuration for the broker. And what happens? They get locked in because they're overcomplicated. And in normal circumstances, to migrate a bridge, it's not an export and an import of the functionality. There's more to it. That's why from our side, we've created automations where we can take this configuration from a bridge provider and map it to what cBridge actually understands. Now, the second reason for hesitation that we're seeing is the human element. Right? You're talking to a dealer and you're telling him you need to change a bridge, but I already know my own. But I've already have my policies and procedures around the bridge. He's thinking at it, he's seeing it from an employee's perspective, not from a CEO or a founder. So he's saying, why should I put all this work together, right? And yeah, I can understand many times they think there's a risk and there's a hesitation, right? But if you see the benefits, then there's always a plan. No one said we're doing a migration over the weekend. That would be impossible. There's a time to discuss how to migrate the configuration, to have discussions, to train the teams, to give, let's say, UAT and demo environment so they can test it. So I can understand where there's hesitations, but after they see the plan, usually then hesitation should be answered.
Mm-hmm. I think you make a great point. It's not necessarily thinking about the internal teams and the employees. It's really coming to the decision makers, showing them that this is not that difficult and it's not that impactful on your business.
Exactly. If I'm talking about, let's say, brokers that actually do have an issue with the bridge provider, right? I've noticed that talking to decision makers, because they're the ones that understand the pain, they're not looking at it from the employee's perspective. These guys, you don't have hesitation. When you're talking to an employee, there's hesitation because they don't want the work or the learning process again.
Or maybe they're just used to the
100%. Yeah. After using it for so long, they know the workarounds. So they're like, why should I change? But again, they're looking at it from the employee's perspective. They don't see the benefits. It could be complexity, not having anyone being able to manage it. I've seen it before. Or the cost is too high. Maybe it's a small brokerage, the costs are too high, they can't pay volume fees. But an employee doesn't really care.
Yeah, absolutely. I think during your presentation, you showed us sort of the pricing structure of cBridge and how it differs from, let's say, typical providers that we see today. I guess in your experience and when you speak to existing partners, clients, or prospective clients, how does sort of this very predictable pricing structure changed their way of thinking about scaling their business and really understanding that they can now essentially predict their costs when it comes to bridge infrastructure?
What happens is it removes a cost pressure they didn't actually know they even had. Why? Because it's become such a standardized way we pay volume fees. So every broker knows that if I'm going to do business with a bridge, then I need to pay volume fees. So they don't even ask why not, right? Now, if you look at an invoice of any of your bridges and you look at it on a basic scale, you'll see that most of the information, most of the variables are a fixed cost. So you have your makers, your takers, you're adding LPs, you're adding platforms, even your hosting fees, most of them are predictable, they're fixed. And then we have one, which is the volume fee, which I like to say this penalizes the broker for doing a good quarter or month. And this is something that as cBridge, we said we're not going to do. Why? What's the difference on the infrastructure or the bridge if I'm doing 1 year, 10 years, or 100 yards? For me, it's the same. So why should we penalize, for example, the broker for all this volume? Yeah, and back to the question, what changes on the broker side is that every dollar spent on volume fees could have been a dollar spent on growth on the company, right? So they may see the invoice and they say, okay, it's manageable, this extra, let's say, volume fee, but times 12 and then times 5 and see the 5 years. And then the cost reduction is just the tip of the iceberg. Now, the below the iceberg is the growth. That dollar to dollar ratio, if you had invested in the company, in marketing, increasing your marketing budgets, sales force, risk management, that was my fourth one, but it was after the leads part. Risk management, training, I will also add risk management again for the ones that didn't hear. So this is the real difference. The cost is just the tip of the iceberg. When the broker understands that I could have taken that and put it in growth, then it changes their mindset. And this is especially for, I would say, smaller to mid-sized brokers. This is particularly important because big boys, they have this unlimited budget. For smaller brokers or mid-size, it's the difference between their CFO telling the CEO, sorry, we cannot do this investment because we're a bit tight. Or if they had predictable pricing, maybe they could have done an investment which could have helped them in growth. So this.
If I can I just add to that?
Absolutely.
One of the reasons why a lot of people won't ship bridges, not every bridge comes with the heritage of Spotware. And so we see a lot of our clients might start moving a bridge, but they can't move their entire flow over to that new provider because that new provider isn't integrated with Jane Street, NatWest, JP Morgan, or any of their tier one LPs.
Mm-hmm.
And so they can't move to that new technology because that new technology doesn't support their existing commercial arrangements.
Mm-hmm. Which could be a major pain.
That is a big thing for them.
Mm-hmm. Alexis, I wanted to also ask, again, when you showed, like, let's say the traditional old school bridge pricing model, right? When you're saying, oh, okay, you had lots of volume, so you have to pay lots of fees. But correct me if I'm wrong, you could have had lots of volume, but not made much revenue on that volume. So that invoice that you got could have actually hurt at the end of the month, right? And kind of like, yeah, we had a lot of volume, we got to pay a lot of fees, but we didn't really make.
Pay the bridge provider, so
Yeah, right.
it hurts every single time.
Right. So in other words, it could be a crappy month actually, and you still have to pay. You still have to pay the fees. I guess my last follow-up question on this is, when you tell them the new pricing structure for cBridge, do they ask you like something like, there's got to be a cash involved in this? Because why is it
The question
why
is,
is it so much, why does it cost so much less?
and I'm like, there is no hidden costs. That's how it is. We don't believe that. Of course, there's always, it's not a fixed fee, one price. Of course, there's a way to scale a bit, but nowhere as close as volume fees. For example, the more platforms, the more LPs you add, of course, it increases price, but not the way volume does, which could be 10-folds or 20-folds more expensive.
Great. Awesome.